Hello everyone and welcome to my Mists of Pandaria leveling guide. In this guide I will talk about the different specializations, what talents and glyphs I like to use, and also compare the different specializations at level 85 to figure out what will be the best to level as in Mists of Pandaria content. I would not recommend people to level as holy, as this is mainly just for dungeon farming, where protection are doing good in the open world and have also instant queues when it comes to most dungeons. This is not the same case as Retribution, as you won't have instant queues, but you'll be killing stuff super quickly in the open world, so it's amazing for solo leveling. However, at low level, protection are doing really good if you don't have heirloom items, where Retribution are actually depending a bit on having some decent gear to also be leveling quickly in the open world. So if you don't have heirloom items, I would honestly level as protection in the beginning and then maybe later on swap to Retribution. And don't forget the instant queues you'll probably have as a tank for dungeon farming. Yeah, it is a good way to level up as you won't have to swap zones constantly. This is the downside to Retribution, but then again, questing in the open world is usually the quickest way to level up in Mists of Pandaria, especially when we get to level 85 to 90 content. This is why I'm always using a leveling guide when I'm leveling up all my characters in Mists of Pandaria, and the one I'm using right here I will also leave in the description below this video, where there will be a redirect link to where you can download and test it out. Next up, my talent and glyph tree, and also an explanation for choosing these. The reason why I always choose Pursuit of Justice is because it passively increases my movement speed, and if I have leftover holy power between the different creatures, I will also have more movement speed. Where a long arm requires you to hit an enemy, and when you hit these enemies, you usually don't want to be running from them. Speed of flight, yeah, a nice movement speed, but then again, a short duration and a long cooldown. At level 30, I never choose evil is a point of view, as this is mainly just for PvP. You don't want to spend a lot of time chasing a target that is being feared. And this is the same case with Repentance. You're never really struggling killing two enemies at the same time, so why do you need to CC one of them? Also because any damage taken will break the CC, and this prevents you from doing cleave damage. This is why I always choose Fist of Justice, as it reduces the cooldown of my stun by 30 seconds, but it's still stunning that target for 6 seconds, enough time for you to probably also finish them off, or at least cast a couple of heals and continue the fight. At level 45 there's a couple of decent options. Selfless Healer is definitely not bad. Using a Judgment will also make your next Flash of Light a lot quicker and better. But casting 3 Judgments will make your Flash of Light instant if you haven't used any of the procs. This is so insane because you'll then never really spend any time healing yourself beside one global cooldown. Eternal Flame is never really a go-to, as it also replaces our Word of Glory, so the only instant heal we already have if we don't choose Selfless Healer. This is mainly just for those of you who would like to level as holy, therefore it's usually a no-go. Sacred Shield is absolutely insane, as it's always providing a decent amount of absorbed damage. Every time you're absorbing damage, it's also resulting in you not having to cast a heal. That being said, Selfless Healer is of course not bad, I just don't like the 1 second global cooldown after casting that instant heal. That's a global cooldown where you could instead have used it on doing more damage, and that's why I mainly choose Sacred Shield. At level 60 I never choose this talent when I'm playing Retribution Paladin or simply doing solo content. However, when you're going to tank or heal in dungeons, it's not a bad talent at all, as these spells will mainly benefit your party. My go-to is always Unbreakable Spirit, because no matter what I'm going to do, then having a reduced cooldown on these 3 spells is absolutely insane. Especially when we also compare it to the last possible talent. This is not going to be useful for solo content at all. I could see a Holy Paladin in dungeons maybe use this, but then again I feel like the other 2 choices are just better. By the time we reach level 75 we can choose Holy Avenger. This is definitely an amazing spell, but I dislike the 2 minutes cooldown. I don't really want to depend on an important cooldown before I can kill many enemies. This is why I usually never go for this choice. The other option is to improve our wings, but this is also a huge cooldown. Yeah, these 2 talents are not bad if it comes to bursting down an elite or something else, but then again most enemies won't be elite. Therefore I would much rather like to have a passive that constantly increases my damage, or well at least often, and this is what Divine Purpose does. Every time you use a Holy Power ability, there's a 25% chance that Divine Purpose will proc. When this procs, there's an 8 seconds window where you can use your next Holy Power ability without any Holy Power cost, and it will consume or will act as if you were using 3 Holy Powers. During those 8 seconds, you can for example also build up 5 Holy Power. So when you use the proc, you have 5 Holy Power, so use 3 more Holy Power, and then you can generate 1 additional and hopefully get another free proc, just like it happens in this case. Absolutely insane for burst if you get the right procs. What about the different glyphs? Well, as Retri, I like to use Glyph of Inquisition and also Glyph of Mass Exorcism. But these two spells you don't unlock at low level, which is why I don't go for these in the beginning. Instead, I would much rather like to have this for my Judgment. So if I use Judgment on another target, it will also do 20% more damage. Usually this is what happens because you kill those enemies super quickly. As protection, that Judgment glyph is also amazing, but you would also like to go for this that increases the damage done by your next Shield of Righteousness up to a total of 30%. As protection, there's many useful glyphs, and for your third option it could for example be this that adds a physical damage reduction when you use your Divine Protection, but the magic damage taken has also been reduced from 40% to 20%. Or apply a daze to your Avenger Shield so you can kite a bit better, or Holy Wrath doing 50% more damage when the target is at 20% health or less, useful when you need to finish those off. There's 3 minor glyphs I always use. The first one here, so I can use my Hearthstone and bubble and get away without dying. When I use my Paladin mount, I will now also be casting my Blessing automatically, so I never really forget to apply this. And of course, Avenging Wrath, now applying a slow fall. It can be used to for example jump down a mountain without dying, but in most situations you will have your bubble to prevent fall damage anyway. Next up, I'll compare Protection and Retribution open world leveling, at low level but also in Mists of Pandaria zones. What you see here is Retribution at level 10 in action. Yeah, it is dominating. Most of my spells has always next to no cooldown when I'm engaging the next enemy, and I'm just blasting through these. This is why I like the specialization a lot, because you always have something to click. What about Protection? Well, you're also doing fairly decent single target damage, but it isn't as high compared to Retri, also because you're using a one-hand, while Retri is using a two-hand. However, if you can manage to stack enemies together and use your Avenger Shield, you're going to be doing a lot of damage, not just to one target, no, up to 3. But it also has a long cooldown, and this is why Retri is honestly better at this level. As Protection are leveling up, so close to level 40 and above, you will see them catching up. Single target wise they're not doing that great, but when you're pulling many enemies, you're benefiting from having so many different things that does cleave damage, or well, AoE damage. Remember, if you get a bit tired of this kind of leveling, or well, just doing quests in the open world, you can always sign up for dungeons and most likely have instant queues as tank. Retribution are still dominating in single target kills, as you're usually two-shotting most enemies. But we just saw what Protection are capable of doing when you're pulling 4, 5 or more enemies. This is sadly not the same case with Retri. You're not doing as much cleave damage, and your survivability is worse because you're not using a shield or having the other defensive skills. That being said, Retro Paladins are still performing really good above level 40, so it's not like you should be respeccing into Protection. In my opinion, you should just choose the specialization that fits your gameplay and that looks the most fun to you. How about when we move into Mists of Pandaria zones? Well, Retro Paladins are all of a sudden doing so much better when you're fighting 4 or 5 enemies at the same time. Yeah, you are sometimes struggling a bit with your health, but then you just do one flash of light and a word of glory, and you're back to almost full health and ready to engage a lot of new enemies. So all of a sudden you are playing a specialization that is dominating single target wise, but also performing really good when it comes to many targets at the same time. And this is why I usually level as Retribution in Mists of Pandaria zones from 85 to 90. How about Protection? Well, sadly they're not really doing that great when you're just fighting 1 or 2 enemies at the same time. Your kill speed are slow, so you are really depending on being able to do huge pulls. So quest where there's going to be many enemies you can pull at the same time else the leveling speed are awful. But can't we just sign for dungeons and level like this to max level? Well, unlike low level dungeons, then you actually want to be questing in Mists of Pandaria zones, as you'll eventually unlock things such as a lot of reputation, new dailies, good quest rewards, and many other things. And these things you won't unlock if you dungeon level, and then you will have to come back to these zones and do them at max level. For that specific reason, I'm always recommending people to be questing in Mists of Pandaria from 85 to 90. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you would like to see more Mists of Pandaria guides, make sure to check out my channel or subscribe to get notified the next time I post a new video. As always, thank you so much for watching and have an amazing day. Peace.